John Pregler, why are you running to represent Ward 1?
First off, thank you, Ms. Bragg and the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. Elections and voting are the only aspect of our system that make us a democracy, so it's very important that everybody turn out and vote so we have a strong democracy. Let me start by saying I believe everybody up on this dais wants what is best for Dubuque. We want Dubuque to be progressive and an inclusive community. We all want Dubuque to be culturally and economically vibrant. And we all want our children to be able to get a quality education without having to fear them falling victims to drugs or violence within our community. I also believe there are real differences in how each one of us would prioritize and spend our limited tax dollars and on which projects and programs moving into the future. I, for one, believe the current and past councils have made some investment missteps while core city infrastructure services and issues have gotten neglected. If you want to continue the spending habits and priorities of the past two city councils, and if you want to continue the same reactive approach to crime, then my opponent, Mr. Shaw's ideas are for you. But I'm running as a candidate because people desire change, a fresh approach, and a new approach. If you believe not all debt was spent on needed infrastructure improvements, and if you believe crime is a concern and should be dealt with proactively versus reactively, then I ask you to vote for John Pregler on November 7th. Thank you. First, I don't think Dubuque is unique in this regard. I think this is a challenge we see all over the United States. You see it every night on the news. I think Dubuque's actually probably ahead of the curve compared to a lot of communities and the situations they face. I think we've taken great effort as a community with Inclusive Dubuque, Indivisible Dubuque, the NAACP, the Human Rights Commission. You include the Chamber of Commerce and local businesses. There's a lot of effort being made to make people feel welcome and inclusive in Dubuque. And I agreed with the City Council back in June of this year when they passed the proclamation claiming Dubuque a city of welcome and opportunity. And I think as we keep on talking about this ability to come together in our community and hold things like the City Expo, like the Taste of Dubuque, it gives people the opportunity to come together and get to know each other. And I think when people start getting to know each other and talk to each other, that's when these walls come down. So I think a lot of people feel estranged from the city of Dubuque just because they're struggling, they're in poverty, and they need help. And I think if we can address some of those things, some of the people that don't feel welcomed in Dubuque will feel more welcomed because they'll feel like they're more included in the city and they'll feel like they're participating more in the city. So I think the city's doing all the right things. I think we're on the right track. So I'd like to see us continue. Thank you. Thank you. Addressing mental health care is one of my primary issues I'm running on under crime and safety. And it really touches on a variety of things. Not only does it touch on crime, it also touches on families. It also touches employers because mental health comes in all shapes and sizes and all forms. From the addicted heroin addict who's going to need addiction treatment for the rest of their lives. I've spoken with about 20 different Dubuque police officers. Each one of them tell me that the biggest issue they face on a daily basis is dealing with people with mental health care issues and the inability to get them help. First off, our Dubuque police officers are not trained by professionals to the extent they need to be to deal with mental health issues when they run into it. And their only recourse besides letting them go is to arrest them. And as Kate said, they have to then put them on the list, wait for an appointment and a bed to open up in Cedar or across the state in Council Bluffs. And we have to house them in the Dubuque Law Enforcement Center and transport them over on our own dime. And by doing that, we also then give these individuals a criminal record. So it makes it harder for them to find housing, to find jobs, because now these addicts or these individuals who may be depressed or have bipolar disease or other diseases now have a criminal record that probably wasn't warrant. It was just due because they could not get the mental health care they needed. So it needs to be addressed across the board. As far as the city addressing climate change, there's two aspects to that. One is the citizens of the city of Dubuque, and one is the city government. As far as the citizens of the city of Dubuque, continuing to recycle and to think about the different aspects of what we can do as homeowners with our yard waste, with the energy we consume at our homes, just being cognizant of what we do on a daily basis can definitely help us as citizens be cognizant of climate change. As far as the city of Dubuque and what the city of Dubuque can do, there's a couple different things. Climate change impacts us based off of the type of energy we use as a city. So I'm in favor of exploring green energies that do have a return on investment and that will pay for themselves in the long run. I'm also in favor of promoting more recycling. The city of Dubuque can talk about things all they want, but if citizens do not take action and implement it in their daily lives, we're just talking hot air. So everybody wants to change the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves first. And really, that's where it starts. And as the citizens buy into that more and more, as we've been doing over the last decade, I think you'll see that permeate into our institutions and our businesses more and more, and then eventually it will become part of our daily lives. First, it's important to understand that the hiring freezes and the vacancies was caused by the increase in our city debt and our debt burden that we currently carry. And that is impacting our annual operating budgets in which these staffings tend to get paid out of. So the first thing we need to do in order to address these vacancies and these hiring freezes is we need to pay down the debt, and we need to keep the debt paid down in order to start making investments in human capital within the city government. So that's very important. We focus a lot on the capital expenditures, or the council has over the last 10 years, and it's definitely impacted that operating budget. This year in 2017, two of the top 5 expenses that we've paid out so far has been on debt principal and debt interest. Principal being our number 1 expenditure this year so far out of anything, and interest being our number 3 expenditure, going to banks, not going to local construction companies that hire local staff that pay livable wages to build things that last forever. We're paying today for decisions of yesterday. And so the debt is the biggest component that plays into these hiring freezes and these vacancies, and it's paying down the debt and keeping the debt low is what's going to allow us to start hiring and staffing to the appropriate levels required. Public safety is more than just crime or law enforcement. Public safety also touches on health. It also touches on transportation. So there's a variety of things we can do outside of creating new laws or law enforcement to help with public safety. One is with pedestrian traffic in the Central Corridor area, and especially out in the West End in Ward 1 along the JFK Corridor area, the Northwest Arterial where all the students crossing at Pennsylvania. So there's a lot we can do with addressing pedestrian traffic around Dubuque that will increase public safety. We also have the aspect of public health. We could have invested over the last 5 years some of that capital budget in building a new water tower out in the north end to help with the low water pressure and rehabilitate the Eagle Point water tower. There's waterborne diseases when water pressure is not high enough that can occur, so there's a public health issue. And as far as crime goes, the biggest thing we can do aside from law enforcement is start telling criminals you are no longer welcome here in Dubuque, and telling people that witness crimes like Michael Barber or Marlon Barber Jr.'s murder in 2012, in which there were 20 witnesses, we believe, but yet we don't have the murderer caught, that it is unacceptable not to cooperate with the police when you see a crime. And you are just as guilty or culpable in that crime if you don't cooperate. So I think sending the message that you're welcome if you want to live in Dubuque, please come here. But if you're a criminal, you're not welcome. First off, thanks to the League of Women Voters and everyone in the audience and everyone at home for taking the time to view tonight. This November 7th, Ward 1 voters have a clear choice between change on the City Council or 4 more years of more of the same. To answer Mr. Mayor's question earlier about what projects on the list that he held up wouldn't we do, I've had people tell me they would not do a $450,000 bathroom at Bluff and 5th Street. I've had people tell me they would not do the $500,000 between losses and buildings we have in the Ice Harbor boat docks. I've had people tell me that they would have scaled back on the amount of parking spaces we built in our parking ramps, since a lot of that goes vacant and unused. So there's a lot of spending that we could have used in better areas for water towers, for helping low-income people with their rental properties, those types of things. And Mr. Shaw has aligned himself with the last 2 city councils, and he stated that the Telegraph-Herald, or to the Telegraph-Herald on September 22nd, that crime is in a downward trend, and the only way you can really address crime in a meaningful way is first to pull people out of poverty and give them opportunity. Tell that to a family who's lost a loved one to murder over the last 5 years. We've had 8 murders in our town. I really am looking to address the crime issue, both from a mental health perspective as well as from a shots fired perspective. I think if you address mental health and shots fired, I think all the other categories that have risen in the last 5 years will start to drop across the city of Dubuque. And I will also provide greater oversight and prudence in the capital projects we have planned for the future. We cannot continue to borrow and invest in Chaplain Schmidt Island, the Southport, develop the Southwest Arterial and everything else without taking on more debt or raising taxes. So we need to bring that under control, and I'll do that for the first ward.